In the grand hall of a mansion, dimly lighted with candles, Joanne stood in silence, her heart heavy with mixed emotions. The opulent setting felt as cold and unwelcome as her new husband Jungkook. His gaze partly flickered towards her, and he held himself with a detached arrogance, as if he were just as uninterested in their wedding as she feared. They had known each other since childhood, although they had not crossed paths much since back then. He had been a careful boy, obsessively kind of her, but that was a different life. Now he was the feared mafia boss, cold and unfeeling, yet here she was standing beside him as his wife, not out of love on his part, but obligation. She, however, had never been able to forget those brief moments of kindness from their youth. The marriage was one of the convents his family had. Instead, he married her to strengthen a gracious alliance, and reluctantly he had agreed, but she knew his was temporary. The contract stated that after 6 months he would be free to leave her. It was a cruel arrangement, yet Ryan could not help but cling to a glimmer to hope that somehow these 6 months might melt his ice exterior. The first few weeks passed in silence and tension. Jungkook was cold, distant, and dismissive. He had made his terms clear. She was to stay out of his way, not asked about his work, and not accept any affection. When accepted his condition, though it hurt, she tried her best to be sportive, making effort to learn about his likes and dislikes, attempting to make the house feel like a home. But every small gesture was met with indifference, sometimes even a sarcastic remark. One evening she nervously prepared his favorite dish, hoping it would soften his attitude. As she set the table and waited for him to come home, her heart raced with generous anticipation. With Jungkook finally arrived, he barely glanced at her or the food. "You don't need to try so hard, Ryan," he said coolly, sitting down. "The marriage is not permanent. Don't waste your time trying to impress me." Archie started at his words, but she forced a smile. "I'm not trying to impress you. I just thought you had like it." He scoffed, pushing his chair back. "Do whatever you want. It does not change anything." The silence over his word was deafening, and when with her lip to hold back tears, she was alone in this marriage, and it felt like nothing she did would ever be enough. Despite his attitude, Ryan noticed glimpses of a different Jungkook knew, and then once while preparing dinner, she accidentally cut her hand, and as the blood trickled down, she winced in pain. Jungkook happened to walk in at that moment. His eyes narrowed, and without a word, he took her hand and inspected the cut. "You should be more careful," he muttered. His voice looked with something that sounded his concern. He cleaned and bandaged her wound, his touch surprisingly gentle. But just as quickly as the moment came, it vanished. He let go to her hand and walked away, his expression once again cold. These small glimpses made Ryan's heart ache even more. She could not understand why he was so determined to push her away when there was clearly something more beneath the surface. She knew he had endured to a lot of become the man he was, but she could not help but wonder if she would ever be able to reach the heart he kept so well guarded. As the months passed, tension in Jungkook's words grew. One was visually aware to the dangers that come with his mafia life, but he had been kept in the dark about the details. One evening during a gathering with his, she noticed a man his with a menacing smile. Feeling uneasy, she excused herself and went to the kitchen, but the man followed her. "Sure, Jungkook's new wife, are not you?" he asked. He was making. "It must be terrifying being married to a man like him." She swallowed nervously, but before she could respond, Jungkook appeared, his expression dark. Without a word, he grabbed the man by the collar and shoved him against the wall. Don't you dare speak to her again, Jungkook hesitated, his voice low and dangerous. The man stammered an apology before quickly leaving. Jungkook turned on Twan, his jaw clenched. Here, this is exactly why I told you not to get involved in my world. Taehyung, you have no idea how dangerous it is. I did not do anything. Wan protested. He approached me. Stared off it, Wan. He snapped. I don't need you getting in the way. His heart got deep, but she refused to show weakness. I may not understand everything about your word, but I'm not afraid of you and your enemies, Jungkook. I'm not some frected doll. He looked to her, surprised by her defense, and for a moment she thought she saw a flicker to respect in his eyes, but just as quickly he turned away, his walls firmly back in place. As they ran together, Devante Jungkook found himself in conflict when bravery and resilience has begun to wear down his defense, and he found himself drawn to her kindness. One night after a particularly tense meeting, he found himself confronting her about his past, a rare moment of fallibility. I was not supposed to be in this world, he said. He was barely above a whisper, but I did not have a choice. This life chose me, and now it's all I know. While still in silence, her heart aching for him, she reached out gently, placing her head over his. He did not pull away, and for a brief moment he allowed himself to feel the warmth of her touch. But as soon as he realized what he was doing, he pulled back, his expression hardening. This Jane nothing, Ryan, don't accept me to be someone I am not. Ryan would it hurt her to see him retreat into his shell. She could see that he was fighting his own demons, and she hoped that someday he might trust her enough to let her in. The turning point came when Jungkook's enemies decided to exploit his feelings for Ryan late one night. They kidnapped her knowing that it would run Jungkook out. When he realized she was missing something, snooped with him for the first time. She could not hide his emotion, the fear and anger he felt were overpowering, and he was willing to do whatever it took to get her back. With his most trusted man, Jungkook launched a relentless search, in mind racing with worry. He could not bear the thought of losing her, especially not when he had never allowed himself to show her how much he truly cared. When he finally found her, she was bruised and terrified but alive. As he pulled her into his arms, he felt a surge of relief mixed with guilt. He had put her in danger, and he could not forgive himself for that. When I looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears, yet there was no anger, only relief. I knew you had come for me, she whispered, her voice trembling. In that moment, Jungkook could not hold back. I'm so sorry, Ryan. I have been too. I have been a fool. I thought I could push you away, but I can't. I can't lose you. He held her tightly. His heart finally laid bare. Ryan wrapped her arms around him, her forgiveness evident in her embrace. But as they pulled back, she looked at him seriously. If we are going to make this work, you have to let go of your anger, Jungkook. You have to let me in. He nodded, his eyes softened. I will try for you. I will try. From that moment on, their relationship transformed. Jungkook was still the ruthless mafia boss to the outside world, but with Ryan, he became someone softer, someone valuable. He made a sincere effort to be more attentive and caring, learning to balance his status lifestyle with his love for her. Slowly, he took steps to distance himself from the darkest aspect of his world, determined to create a safer future for them. Wayne turns watched him wholeheartedly standing by his side as he navigated the changes. She knew it was not easy for them, but every step he took was a testament to his commitment to her. Months later, they stood hand in hand in the same mansion where they had once been strangers. The house, once cold and listless, was now filled with warmth, cold laughter. They had put it alive together, not out of obligation of convenience, but out of genius, love, and respect. Looking into each other's eyes, they exchanged new promise, not bound by contract of or timelines, but by the bond they had forged through hardship and healing. I love you, Ryan, Jungkook whispered, his voice filled with sincerity, and I will spend the rest of my life proving it to you. Fan smiled, her heart full. I love you too, Jungkook. Thank you for finally letting me in. And as they stood together, Ryan knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them side by side, bound not by obligation but by a love that had finally the end.